And welcome back to Purple Sector, everyone. After a pretty exciting Austria qualification session, a little sketchy in Q2 for my favorite driver, and Q3 got exciting. We got Russell on pole, Leclerc in second. Great to see him up there again. Hamilton, Kimi, Max in fifth, but we'll kind of see how that goes. Lando, Piastri, Hadjar, Lawson, Limbad. So top eight
Yeah,
kind of makes sense.
yeah. I think in large, mostly what we had predicted that
Yeah,
Mercedes was still going to be up there, that Ferrari and Red Bull were going to gain some relative pace, that McLaren would kind of fall behind those guys. I think I had predicted Hadjar in the top 10. I think VCarb is maybe the surprise that they're in the lead of the midfield and that Gasly missed out on Q3. So obviously we'll see how this race shakes out. But yeah, pretty entertaining quali,
yeah,
and
it was.
yeah, this is a good watch. Um,
If you
I was
have
a little
not
nervous
watched it,
for
you should
you.
watch it.
Well, if you haven't watched it, what are you doing watching this? But I was a little nervous for you at the end of Q2. You know, they gambled with Max, and man, it was close. I think it was a tenth or less than a
Point.
tenth. It was
It
real
was
close.
400ths.
Yeah, too close for
Um,
my
for
comfort.
anyone who didn't watch Q2, Red Bull decided to not put Verstappen out for a second hot lap, and everyone was improving behind him, and including Hadjar. That was my biggest scare. I was like, oh, Hadjar's green. He's gonna jump Max, which put him in eighth at the time. And then, other than the V carbs jumped big
Hmm.
time, and then Gasly barely missed out. I was I almost crapped my pants. I was scared. I was like, this is a disaster if this happens right now.
That would have
Um,
been real bad.
the bonus
He,
is he does have extra softs,
yep, yeah. I
so
mean, he definitely would have put the softs on at some point in the race and tried to fly up the order. So this is a Max track. He knows it. The team decided to bank on him and roll the dice, and it looked like it was going to pay off. And I think it did in some ways. I think the thing that stood out to me in qualifying was that it was really difficult to actually determine the direct A to A pace comparison, because so much of it was the timing at which they came out in the session. There was a lot of track evolution, but also there was a lot of cars that were going out on scrub sets versus cars coming out on fresh tires. And so, like at one point, Lawson had jumped. Oh, I got a frog in my throat. That was crazy. At one point, Lawson had jumped up to like P5 or something in Q1. I was like, what is happening right
I,
now? Um,
I was seeing memes after quali about um, something about Racing Bulls being up there, and I don't think the person that made the memes realized that a lot of the top teams did scrub tires because there was a point where we had
yeah.
like Merckx, like Piastri, Lawson, and like a Ferrari. It was weird. It was really weird. But
Yeah, Q1 was weird and it didn't get real spicy until the end of Q2, but Q3 was a banger. Um, it looked like Max was going to put in a pretty good lap there. And I don't know, but my quick analysis is maybe a rear lock or something, or just the car got a little
we
bit
have an
unsettled on
answer
the
now,
curb. Okay.
actually. So for anyone that hasn't seen it, Max crashed in turn nine. Um, didn't look like any like normal turn in. Probably looking at P3, P4. I mean, based on all the data at the end, he wasn't going to beat the Mercedes on those last two laps. Assuming he doesn't crash and Kimi and George both finish their laps. Max P3, P4. Obviously, you don't know. His rear wing failed, so he lost all downforce. So just
Oh, well, that would make sense
completely,
because it was the rear snapped out on him.
yeah, he just
So,
completely didn't close.
well, that's really interesting. Because it was rumored that McLaren was going to bring their version of the Macarena wing, and then there was a whole dialogue about Ferrari's rotates 270 degrees. Red Bull's visually looks less complex, but actually has a secondary component that flips the wing up higher, which is why their slot gap is
Yeah, it's
so much
massive.
more open. And there were people kind of theorizing that that was going to contribute to more wear and tear. And lo and behold, I don't know if that was the cause of the failure, but I have to believe that it's somehow related, right?
I know Laura Menke basically said the team takes full credit. So I don't, other than seeing that answer, I haven't really looked if any of the Macarena wing was part of their upgrades because they brought like 7 upgrades or something this weekend.
Yeah.
It's like a whole new car basically. Like
I
they
don't think it was a
changed a
new
lot.
I don't think it was a new wing, but I guess I'm just
So,
saying
like
like
any of the
that's opening and
like
closing so many times per lap, and they've had it for so many races now that
yeah.
maybe it was just a part failure. And
I'd be curious though if they change any components to maybe like make the opening, 100th of a second faster, something minor.
mm,
I don't know.
I don't know.
But basically, the team took credit as no fault to Max because he had said in turn 6 he had the same snap and he's like, I have never felt that before. I don't know what it was.
Well,
Later on, we'll find that out.
my original theory was early in practice he was complaining about rear locking, and so that looked in some ways similar to the rear lock that he had in Australia where he crashed. So that was what I was thinking, but who knows? I guess they came out and said it was the wing, but
Pretty
what do you
crazy
think
in a high
about?
speed corner track.
Yeah,
Not cool.
the crash and the damage was not nearly as bad as it could have been.
Oh,
Years ago the runoff there was all asphalt, and that could have been bad. But I think the gravel did its job there, slowed him down. What do you think about Russell putting in a pole lap under the yellow flag there?
oh, I've seen so many things about this. So I'm trying to take my Russell, my like not a huge fan of Russell, like bias out of this for a second. One, I think it's really weird that where that corner is and how high speed of a track it is, and like you take that corner almost flat out, like
Mm.
it's fast. Where's the red flag? Just straight
Yeah.
up, like that's a red flag situation. If the next car had a failure, or let's just say it was the curb, hits the curb the same way, you now have a driver sandwiched between another car and the barrier. So I think safety wise that was poorly done. And then the controversial part to me, there's like multiple aspects of it. George, I'm sure I'm not going to try to take all of the talking points here. George, led off, but people are like throwing up timestamps of like yellow flag and then double yellow like a few seconds later, which is when Kimmy was going by, and then like just a few seconds later back to single, and then
Hmm.
that's like seems dirty. And also you see all the British bias memes after that of like, oh, you're Italian, it's a penalty. You're British, it's not a penalty. So I'm like, okay, well this is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is the FIA dropped the ball. That was pretty unsafe for them. I think it should have been a red flag.
We
It's a
100% agree on that.
blind corner. People are committing in that corner, and once you go there, there's no saving it. So, yeah, when I look at George, I too am not the biggest George fan, but I think he followed the letter of the rule to a T. He let off how much of a let
There's
off
nothing
there
that says how
was.
much you have to do it.
Right. So, but then there's the other thing, when you talk to like lawyers, right?
Well, me and you
There's
just
the
talked
letter
about
of the
this the
law
other
and the
day.
spirit
Yeah.
of the law, right? Like what was the intent? And the intent was to, try to keep things safe, not just, lift your foot off the throttle for a split second and then get back on it, which in these cars actually benefits you because then you're harvesting, so you had more battery to finish out his lap. Like, eh. So I think the FIA dropped the ball. But I can't be mad at Russell for what he did. It would have been really cool to see Ferrari lock out the front row.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, when he crashed and I saw that Mercedes were on hot laps, I immediately was looking at my wife and saying like, "Oh, Max just gifted Ferrari a front lockout because this
Mm-hmm.
is going to cancel out Mercedes laps, and then Kimi bails, and all of a sudden, like it felt like 2 hours later, George's time pops up on the tree, and you're like, that must
Yeah,
be an error.
the
Doesn't make
timing
sense.
of it was strange. So yeah, I don't know. I think Max could have been P4. If you look at where he was in terms of improving, he was like only a couple thousandths behind Leclerc. Um, I think Antonelli was going to improve for sure, and Russell would have improved regardless. So I think P4 at that point, maybe P5 if Hamilton got him. So I don't think it's the biggest loss. It sounds like the damage isn't bad enough that he's going to have to take a pit lane start. So I think he holds on to the soft tire advantage, and we'll see what he can do tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see. Eh, it's one of those things where it's like, I wish I could have seen where he's going to finish. It definitely wasn't a pole lap. That wasn't the Mercedes had too much. George, you could tell by his excitement that he stuck it on the radio. I don't know if you heard that, but he's like beyond giddy about it. I'm sure
Well, I
he's
think he was
stoked.
up like 4 or 5 tenths or something before he
That's
let off.
that's what he's saying, 5 tenths. And he didn't let off much because he didn't lose much. I'll tell you, it was
No.
minuscule. He did throw a couple downshifts though, so I think that kind of made it look like more of an effort. Um, at first, I was a little angry because of the safety thing of like they have a lot of radio messages going on. Charles checked if like Max is okay. You know how like normally everyone checks, so you have like Lando checking, Leclerc checking, Hamilton checking, all being like, oh, did he get out of the car? Did he get out of the car? And you have George like just smug, beyond excited, which I know he's not worried about the driver. He got what he needed. Kimi bailed, so Kimi's behind two Ferraris. It's like exactly what he
Yeah.
needs to have a good weekend. Um,
Yeah. I think the timing played to his advantage too, because Antonelli was right behind him, and so he was the first car to pull up to Max, and at that point it was the double yellow, so he had to back off. I think there was probably just enough time before George came through the beginning of Sector 3 there that I haven't watched his radio messages, but I would assume that the team would have let him know. And
he
maybe that was part
so
of the
he
decision
let
factor to
them
keep
know.
pushing.
He played the George card where he explained everything before he even crossed the line. I let off as a
Mm,
single yellow. Like I slowed down. Like he's mansplaining it before he even finished his time. Like he already, all the cogs were turning. Very
yeah.
George style. Um, my biggest thing is obviously you can't trust everything you research. Is like the gap between the double yellow to the yellow was 4 seconds, and like we both agree. I mean, 100% it should have been a red flag, but I don't understand how that's not a double yellow at that point. Like anyone
Yeah.
coming behind him should not be able to get a pull lap in. There's no way. It's not. It's just not safe. And it does. I'm not being. This isn't because I'm a Max fan. That's not. If
No, I
Max was
think
one
if any
behind him,
driver was there
I
and
would have
we had
wanted him to
this,
slow down. Like it's a safety
yeah,
issue. Like it could end really badly.
I
Um,
I agree. Unfortunately, the FI hasn't learned that lesson, so here we are.
and hopefully they don't
Um,
learn that one the hard way.
no. Well, should we shift gears and talk about just some relative performance pace and kind of go team by team and maybe start with Red Bull?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Um, I think the Adu ADOU is gonna bite them in the ass. I think it's kind of garbage. I don't
Well,
know
Laurent
all the.
Mekies is throwing a hissy fit about the whole thing because he's basically saying, like, I understand that you've done this testing, but look at the on track performance. We are behind Mercedes, and your ruling that we have the best engine handicaps us, or rather, handicaps Mercedes, handcuffs us to not develop that where they're already ahead and get to continue developing. So I understand why they're fighting it. I don't know that we're ever going to get to the bottom of this because the FIA is just never going to tell us what those testing requirements are because then we're going to get more loopholes and those kinds of things that teams just they seek out. That's the name of the game. So
Based on the fact that, I mean, maybe in that one data point, Red Bull is superior, right?
Mhm.
But I feel like something like this that can have that handicap effect, and you're handcuffing not the, I mean, basically the best team should almost be handcuffed. I'm not saying guaranteed because there's performance aspects with drivers and everything, but I feel like they're not using enough data points to
no, it's
do that.
yeah, it's clearly the way that they're testing it has identified like a characteristic of this Red Bull engine that outperforms the others. Like I don't
It could
know,
just be like
a
raw
poor example of
horsepower.
this of like, yeah, maybe they're just testing the ICE engine and they're not including battery, and so they're saying just like raw horsepower, the Red Bull engine is stronger than the Mercedes, but when they compare it with the hybrid system, the other engines are way like it. That's maybe probably not what's happening, but an example of they're probably testing this, whereas it really should be the whole thing.
Yeah, and with this like secret testing, there's, I mean, I can sit here and bitch about it. I mean, your team gets to upgrade at least. Um,
Yeah.
it just feels very backwards. Um,
Yeah, I also think I understand they're trying to do it to make the sport competitive, but like this is supposed to be the pinnacle of motorsport. Let the guys develop the engine. So
yeah,
what if they have the best one? The other
let
teams need
let
to
everyone
pony up.
develop.
Yeah, I so
Or if you want to do something like this, bump the salary cap for the back half of the grid because that's where they're positioned or something. Like something that's not going to like necessarily significantly change the championship, but if you want to like squish it a little bit, hey,
yeah,
y'all get a little extra money because right now
I
you have the top four teams and you have at least half a second to the next
I think
teams.
you're onto something there because the way that ADOU works is they are given based on how far they off as a percentage. They either get one or two upgrades and money. And I think where you and I are headed is why are we telling teams whether they can or can't upgrade? There should just be a monetary value and they get extra money contributed towards the cost cap. Not giving them money, they just get to spend more with their cost cap to do that.
Yeah, yeah,
But
we're not giving
why
you
are we
money,
telling
but you
teams
can
to
go
develop or
above
not?
the original
Yep.
threshold because you
Yep.
suck. Not
Yep.
because you're
I
good. Here's money.
Yeah. That's how it should be in my opinion. Is it's not an on-off switch. It should just be a cost cap benefit, and the teams that are far behind should be allowed to spend a little bit more money to close the gap. That seems fair to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
the other interesting thing to me, and this just kind of speaks to what F1 is and the amount of focus it takes as a driver to drive in F1, was there was a seat issue that Max had. I think it was FP1 or FP2. I don't remember. But just the small amounts of discomfort and how much distraction that takes. Um, I think a lot of people view F1 as racing, and they're like, "Oh, how hard is it?" Like go pedal, stop pedal, turn. But these cars are so complicated with all of the manipulation they need in the steering wheel and balance and driving techniques. And if you're not locked in and you're distracted because your seat is sliding around or you're just in a slightly different position than you're used to being in, um, that can have a big impact on you in terms of your mental state and your focus. So that was a cool reminder of how much pressure these drivers are under and how much focus it takes.
yeah, I mean, and it might seem like a little thing, but it could be tense, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you saw the porpoising and it was causing back pains, like anyone that had issues with that, other than the performance of the car, they're like, I can't walk after. Like they're
Well, it
used and
makes you
abusing
feel
their,
for Aston and their nerve damage vibrations. That
yeah, Alonso's probably wishing he retired by now.
yeah, let's give the oldest guy on the grid the roughest ride.
Um, I, we kind of covered my other thoughts on Red Bull with the like quality placing. The only thing that I would touch on is I think with this quality you really saw where Max is out of the league with their number two drivers because
Mm-hmm.
I mean Hadjar finished at the back of that front pack, eighth. So he's still pretty young in the sport. I mean, you have Kimmy, whatever. Kimmy feels like a veteran at this point. Um, he even said in the interviews after, like, I got everything I could out of it today, but I think this kind of makes you ask the question: is Hadjar gonna be able to keep up? To keep
I
Red
think
Bull
he is. I mean,
competitive? I mean, he's doing well.
he showed the pace. I want to say it was Q2, maybe Q1. I mean, he was putting in laps like within a tenth, and even in Q3, he was less than 2 tenths behind Max. So yes, he's P8, but he's really not that far behind Max. Now, we didn't see Max's ultimate pace. Maybe that was another tenth that he shaved off or so based on Leclerc's time that he was on par with. But I think he's doing better than any other second seat Red Bull driver in the last couple of years. So
Well,
I don't think he's
100%
a
on that.
danger.
I
Yeah.
think maybe what I'm wondering is like he's not really splitting teams up. I guess I should say in the quali. Like he's there. Doesn't feel
Mm.
like he's not giving us an X factor. I guess like in the excitement. So just kind of hoping
No.
he bumps it up. But like
Yeah.
I said, he's been better than anyone the last few years. Um, with the performance of Lawson, it almost makes you wonder if they kept him around. Because he's
Mhm.
been the last few weekends he's been awesome. So I don't know. I like Hadjar.
Yeah.
I'm not hating on Hadjar, but I want to see him step it up a little bit.
I think Red Bull has some thinking to do because I think if you had asked them at the beginning of the season that Lawson was low man on the totem pole, so if anyone was going to be out in this season or at the beginning of next season, that it was probably Lawson. But they've got some tough decisions to make because Hadjar's doing well. Lindblad's not far off Lawson. Both drivers in that V carb seem to be doing well.
I I was thinking about that today with Quali. I feel like they're in a position where currently, I mean, there's plenty of races to go where they shouldn't really be thinking about a driver change.
No.
They should at this point just be worried about keeping Max around. That's about it.
Yeah, well, we've talked about this before. There's something to say about consistency, right? And in that context, we were talking about team leadership and team principles and stuff, but drivers as well, right? Like, I don't think they're in a position where they should be mixing it up.
Oh, no. Create a team
Um,
environment.
yeah. Should we jump to Mercedes?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as something that I caught when I was watching practice and qualifying was at one point they had talked about an interview that George Russell had done where he was asked about the development race, acknowledging that Mercedes is kind of behind the curve. They haven't brought as many significant upgrades. They brought a little bit in Miami and a little bit in Canada, but really not much since. This was another update that they brought. They brought new batteries. And so, the big news for everybody has been all of these DNFs from Mercedes powered teams, and a lot of them have been battery centric. So I think they brought a new battery upgrade to this track. Although it seems that heat is the common denominator here that's causing these failures, is when they don't get enough cooling. And so on a track like this where it's pretty hot. The chance of rain has gone away, and it's looking like it's 30 some odd degrees Celsius, which, by the
High
way,
80s.
for those of us here in the U.S., it's high 80s. So, I was smirk a little bit for those Europeans that are like, "Oh, it's a record heat wave," and it's like 90 degrees. I'm like, no, that's
No,
normal
I've had
early summer.
consistent like 95
Yeah,
plus for like 2.5 weeks. So
yeah.
I'd love
Maybe you
some
guys can
88.
figure out air conditioning as an invention this century. That would be cool. Also, side note, have you seen all of the Europeans coming to the US for the World Cup and they're like discovering like Bucky's and
Yeah.
like all of these? It's pretty
Yeah.
hilarious. It's good.
Um, yeah, wearing like Bucky's t-shirts to the games instead
Yeah,
of jerseys.
so good.
Yeah, so all of our food that we have will cause cancer, but it's delicious.
They have free healthcare when they go
We
home.
we
So
don't ban anything apparently.
yeah. Well, anyway, back to the batteries. I'm not sure if everyone took one. I know that Lando did not. So in our
Yeah, I would
past
give him
video,
the
we had speculated whether taking a battery upgrade would trigger an allocation and thus a grid penalty. Confirmed, yes, that is the case. So if Lando had taken it, he would have had a grid penalty to serve. It seems like McLaren is going to ride that out, and they'll just wait until they have to replace it, and
We
then they'll
talked
take
about
the
that. It's
upgrade at
kind of
that
like
point.
a
Yeah.
you get what you get on that.
Yeah.
Ferrari
So, yeah.
going into Q3 or looking at free practice and going through qualifying looked quick, but not
Not
the
that
best.
quick. I
And
had
then
this
go
was one
ahead.
of the few weeks where I had enough free time to actually sit down and watch free practice and listen to interviews and those kinds of things. And the whole time I was like, man, they talked a big game. The Ferrari hopium is strong, and it was not there. And then yeah, like you said, that Leclerc lap in Q3, I was like, oh, they were sandbagging hard.
Yeah, because I didn't have time to watch a lot of free practice, but I was keeping up with. I always look at lap times and everything, even though they're kind of like, whatever. But it gives you a general consensus as the weekend goes. And I was
Mhm.
like, man, because we had talked about it. Ferrari's upgrade is either gonna like they're gonna step up or they're gonna fall flat on their face and have to revert. Yeah, the Leclerc lap out of nowhere, just jumping like 2/10 above everyone. I was like, and they have pace. And then Hamilton comes through on his one hot lap, and they have pace. I'm like, okay, this is getting dramatic real quick. Um, they look
Yeah,
quick.
I think it was interesting. You know, we talked about Mercedes and their battery upgrade. So it seemed like they were busy during practice making relatively quick push laps to try to, strain test this new battery to make sure they weren't going to have any more battery issues this race. It's still my hot take prediction that at least one Mercedes powered car is going to DNF this race. So I don't know who that's going to be. But it looked like Ferrari was A, sandbagging, or B, purposefully running slower because they were running other tests based on these other upgrades that they've brought. So, yeah, it was really cool to see that come to fruition and have a surprise, almost front row lockout. I think this is going to be a spicy start to the race, knowing this track. Hopefully turn one stays clean, and I guarantee there's some moves into turn three at the top of the hill.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, so we're looking at Ferrari has the pace on the high speed corners, and Merc has the straight end speed. So it'll, based on just the track layout, it's going to be very interesting to see how that battle unfolds. Um, I think in George's case, he needs a clean turn one and to get as far as ahead as possible before turn three. Um, but my prediction, Leclerc looks good
Yeah,
out of the slump.
he appears to be, knock on wood,
Yeah,
appears
race to
to be
go.
out of the slump. And so it's going to be cool. It reminds me of earlier in the season, Australia, Japan, when we had Ferraris up there duking it out at the beginning of races and the Charles versus Lewis fights. Earlier this season, we were like, is the Ferrari fighting going to give an advantage to Mercedes? And coincidentally, we haven't seen that since.
That
So I
was
think
my
there's going to be
next.
some
My
action.
next comment was: do they shoot themselves in the foot, or do
Oh, that
they?
sounds like a Ferrari move if I've ever heard
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Or they don't battle, and then when it comes to tire strategy, they pit
Oh,
someone wrong or stack or do something weird. So Leclerc
yeah,
looks good. We'll see how it pans out.
yeah. Yeah, the other thing that I noticed is, it's again, like I said earlier, this track is so short that the cars kind of bunch up because there's just not enough track to actually have much of a delta here. So cars look closer than they are in reality. So, a 1/10 gap might be 3/10, 4/10 on a longer track. Um, so it's going to take us a while to really understand what the results were of this Ferrari upgrade, but at least for now, it seems to have brought them closer to Mercedes. It does still look like Mercedes has that advantage. We've been talking the whole season that Mercedes' advantage is not over one lap; it is race pace. Um, so we're going to see tomorrow how that pans out.
It'll be very interesting to see the Ferrari race pace, and I'm excited to see the Red Bull too because of the vast amount of upgrades they brought also. So I think it's still Merc Ferrari. I know you don't really hear anyone at Red Bull again like, "Hey, we're up there," you know. But I'm excited to see um, that race pace. And how you feeling about your boys over at McLaren? We didn't bring the Macarena wing, as you said earlier.
No, Lando had I don't know, a coolant leak or something like that at the beginning of
Yeah.
FP1. It was only slotted to be run in FP1 as a testing session, and so he only got like 15 minutes of runtime or something. So I think they bailed on the test. So that's a little bit of a bummer. Sounds like they are planning to bring it at some point. So who knows when that is. Um, I'm excited to see it just because it looks cool. And I'm also very curious which way they went, Ferrari style or Red Bull style. So we will find out. Um, Oscar and Lando had some complaints during practice about brake feel. It seemed to have quieted down by the time we got to Quali, but just something to look out for that they were complaining about. Basically, the pedal travel being too long, and it was kind of a gamble, what they were going to get, which in a car going 200 miles an hour, you want a reliable brake pedal that is going to react a
In
certain
your
way.
regular car, you want your brake
Yeah.
pedal to grab. I've had a brake failure before. It's not fun when they get spongy. It's not a good
Yeah.
time.
No, it is not.
That's good info going into the race though, because obviously free practice you're getting more race time.
Well, you
Quali,
also over
it's
the course of
one lap.
yeah, over the course of the race, the brakes will change based on brake temperature. They brake by wire, so it's not like a typical brake fluid hydraulic system. It's actually electronic. But as the brakes heat up, it changes dynamically. So that is something to look out for just from a reliability standpoint with those McLarens. Um, as a papaya boy, I was pretty disappointed because in practice we looked like we were the second best team and we were bringing the fight to Mercedes. Lando, had purple sector twos quite a bit and was on top of the timing table sporadically. Um, and yeah, they just seemed to fall flat in quali. I think between Red Bull and Ferrari, it was just like what you and I had predicted, that those two teams take a relative step back and that Mercedes and McLaren take a relative step. Well, Ferrari and Red Bull step up, McLaren,
Yeah, I got you.
Mercedes step back.
Little did you know, free practice Ferrari was like sandbagging for real.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I don't have the biggest hopes here. They're about where I predicted. I did have them. I think I had them 7 and 8th, and they're 6 and 7. So we'll see how the race pans out. Um,
You had them, you
they
had them
weren't
six and
far
seven.
off. They weren't far off of Red Bull. Max was like 200ths ahead of Lando. Given again, Max's quicker lap didn't count. Um, and Hadjar was less than 2 tenths behind Oscar. So I think this is the point. Earlier on, we had predicted seeing some McLaren Red Bull fighting. I think this is the race where we see it.
It's set up for
Um,
that, definitely.
mhm. Yep. But I don't know. I'm a little disappointed. Lando through 2 sectors in Q3 looked like he was going to be fighting for pole, and I don't know if he just didn't have enough battery or something to finish out his lap, but fell way off the pace in sector 3. I went back and watched the laps. Didn't look like there was any crazy
I said
mistakes.
he'd
No,
lose
no
the rear in
snaps.
10. That seemed to be the big
No,
thing.
not really. I think it was probably a deployment issue. He just used more battery at the beginning of the lap and ran out. So um, I don't know. For a race like this where they're starting so far back, I just hope for some good action and maybe they can pick up a place or two. We'll see.
But they might get it. I mean, Max and all of them are going to be pushing right away. Max is probably going to try to get in that top four, like by turn 3. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but Hadjar in an interview is basically saying like we'll see how strategy plays. So I could see Red Bull and McLaren kind of getting a little cheeky to try to see who get triumph in that. So we might get a little Mercedes, Ferrari up front, Red Bull, McLaren right behind them. I mean, a nice eventful race would be great. Not necessarily, any crashes, but a little wheel-to-wheel action, some radio messages, be a good time.
Yeah, I mean, we said this in our last podcast. It's something like 60 some odd percent of the time there's a safety car here, and on a short lap,
Yes.
your tire strategy and how you take your pit stops plays a big role here. Not to mention you got big closing speeds at the top of the hill for turn 3. So I think it's likely that there's some strategy, perhaps a safety car that shakes things up and is going to make the race pretty exciting. I'm eager to watch this one tomorrow. I think it's going to be spicy.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'd be surprised if there's not contact at turn 3 on lap 1, but we'll see. I also wouldn't be surprised because of the
takes out
history.
Kimmy as payback.
Revenge. He might take out George for not slowing down enough on the corner that he could have died. um, it's probably a long shot, but with Red Bull's weird strategies with Max, I could see them throwing him on softs to go crazy right away, assuming there's going to be a safety car.
Mm.
Possible. Probably won't start like that, but possible.
I mean, in his position, that might be worth the gamble. If you're convinced that a safety car is going to happen, you know that Max is going to have the pace on the softs. He's going to come out aggressive.
Oh, he's phenomenal.
It's not a bad play. If you're a gambling man, that is not a bad play.
I like to gamble. I'd send it.
We close out with a few other teams. And we mentioned VCarb. They finished or are P9, P10 in quality. We already talked about Lawson. He's looked quick all weekend. And they definitely seem to be best of the rest, even beating out Gasly. It was interesting to me that they had a pretty good pace advantage over the cars behind him. They had 5/10 to the Audi and Haas that got split between P12 and P15. So there's something there. There's a gap there between the midfield teams.
ADOU, maybe that's that Ford powertrain setup. I mean, maybe it's true. Maybe it's really what it is.
Yeah. I mean, we saw
Alpine
Haas take a relative
step back from them.
Yeah, that's interesting that Alpine doesn't look as strong here. Even Colapinto down in P16 is a little bit of a surprise. However, Haas has that new Ferrari engine, so we are seeing them take a relative step forward. This is a power-sensitive circuit, so that matters. And yeah, Williams is just in no man's land. So
they're garbage.
Yeah.
We have our
Speaking of garbage,
established. Let's cover.
Speaking of garbage, let's go to Cadillac. They brought a whole bunch of new cars, and I'm sure they had a pretty aggressive testing regimen that they had planned for practice, and it did not go the way that they wanted. Checo out at the end of FP1 and the beginning of FP2. Bottas had a weird suspension drop thing where the front of his floor caught fire. I never followed up on what the cause of that was, but both cars missed significant time in free practice, which meant they didn't get to optimize their setups. And they're still learning. So I think they took a step forward relative to Aston, but they're still half a second behind Williams.
Yeah, it was Q1, like end of Q1 is like Williams is like 1.2 behind the pace. Caddy was 2 seconds. Aston was 3 seconds, which is crazy.
On a short track like this. Like,
so
imagine
bad.
if they were a Spa, they'd be like 5 seconds off.
Or more. The announcer's like, how do you manage to be 3 seconds behind on this short of a track? Like, it's true. 3 seconds is.
Well, Aston, they talked a little
time.
bit about it. Aston hasn't brought any upgrades. It seems like they're gonna delay it until Silverstone, which is where the team is based. So I know they're in a weird spot, right? Like that you almost have to write off this season, and they're playing the long game. But if you delay those upgrades so often and you change everything, this is basically like a B-spec version of this car. Everything is going to change if they're waiting this long in terms of development to bring it. That's a crapshoot, man. You might, don't know what worked and what didn't work because it's all about how it comes together as a package. So where do you start? if things go wrong. But
I think you're right. I think they're at that point though where it's kind of like scrap everything. Let's bring a whole new car, based on our testing back at the factory and whatever they're doing to figure out chassis Honda hookup here and just bring a whole new car. Um,
yeah,
Silverstone, there's a little bit of talk of Spa today, so I don't really know what they're, that's kind of all up in the air, but I think they're basically just going to bring a new car and see where they're at. But they're so far behind, it's kind of like do our little on track testing, bring them in after 3 laps, take 400 pit stops, just kind of test stuff. They're not racing right now.
no, it's just a season long testing session. They're getting ready for 27. That's all this is. And
I'd
Cadillac
retire
just
if I
seems like they're
was
happy to be
Alonso.
there.
I'd retire.
He talked about it. He said he's not going anywhere. He did say that Aston is his team, but he did also come out and say that he has goals to race another series. So, we talked a little bit about this after Barcelona, or I think before Barcelona, maybe, that it was going to be his last time racing around that track potentially. So, who knows? I think you stick around maybe for another year or so, see how it goes, and
His contracts for
drive
another
off
year.
into the sunset. And I don't know, maybe he goes and races WEC for the hypercar team for Aston. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
we talked about him teaming up with Max. So,
Yeah, he can go
well,
race
endurance
against
racing.
K-Mag.
I was thinking about that again today. That's great.
It's a good time.
That's about it for team performance. Cadillac fell on their face with their upgrades, but they have made improvements throughout the season. So I think as a first year team, they look pretty good. Um, but our predictions, we'll cover those really quick and then we'll bounce. Um, I said Ferrari stays strong. Check. Max Quali high. Decent check.
We'll give you a
It was
check. We'll give you a
I'll
check.
take the check. Leclerc had a bad luck streak. We'll say for Quali, knock on wood again. And then my podium was Max, Kimi, Leclerc, which you just basically swap Max or George. It wasn't that far off. It was pretty good. It would have been probably George, Kimi, Leclerc, Max somewhere. So not terrible prediction.
I think it's intact. I had Kimmy, Lewis, George. So I think we're both right there. It's going to be interesting. I absolutely nailed Max, Lando, Oscar, Hadjar. I had Gasly in there thrown in the
Dude,
mix, but I was real close.
dude, you're pretty on. I mean,
Yeah.
you had the top four mixed up a little bit, but 5, 6, 7, take Gasly out, then Hadjar. You're looking good. One of your predictions though is the Mercedes power unit failure. So we'll see.
I'm not going to
I
speak it
predict
into existence, but I have a gut feeling for who it is.
I know who it's going to be.
I'm not going to
King
say
George.
it. I don't want it to happen. Mm-mm.
We'll
Not
see.
what I'm thinking.
Oh, okay. Interesting. See.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm excited that there wasn't really any news about super clipping or battery harvesting, and that we got an interesting quali. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how this race goes, and I think you and I will try to put another episode out here quickly after the race.
Either right after or next day. Depends on the families and whatnot. But yeah, no, I'm excited. Austria is one of my favorite tracks to watch and sim race too. We love that one. It's a good time. I just hope for some exciting racing. No, like you said, short track. Everyone's gonna be crunched up, so should be pretty exciting. I'm excited to see what the strategy is.
Mhm.
The,
I think it's gonna be a good one.
yeah, but we'll call it there. We won't talk for too much longer, but we'll see y'all after the race. Bye.